What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am BDLM, coming with my buddy J4Y, bringing you yet another episode of the Dota On Demand podcast. Episode number 47, insert snake joke here. How's it going, man?
Going pretty well. Yeah, I'm looking pretty fly right now. Did just get my hair cut recently, so now we are like the buzzed bros. I mean, mine's not as short as yours per se, so I guess you win in that department. But alas, the hero we're going to be discussing, you could say has the longest. Well, I can't call it hair. Head toppings. Well, that's kind of a weird way to put it too. But yeah, how have you been?
I've been pretty good. I'm doing alright. I've been loving the Dota, I'll be honest. Because, you know, last time when we talked, I was like, man, it's so cool because of like the way Dota's being played right now and the number of heroes. I'm just going to point out some things that I happened to notice, and I didn't write all of the specifics down to all these. But some of the heroes that may or may not have appeared, I believe since our last episode. Solo Mid Doombringer. Meepo, which is I got the specifics of that one, don't worry.
Yes.
In the G League, Anti-Mage still being very popular. Morphling was picked up in 2 games back-to-back by a team playing their defense games. That Dragon Knight Darkseer combination that was so popular a while ago popped up again. Zeus and Pugna. So just crazy how all these heroes are getting some play, and you know, really all these heroes are kind of pieces of metagame of Christmases past. You know, like some of these, like I was mentioning, the Dragon Knight Darkseer is an old one, but it's so neat to see these heroes come back, and it's just, you know, they're all still viable.
Oh yeah, but they're really. I don't think there might be a single hero. Well, except for Clockwork, who's really not viable in this day of the game. No, you can find a room for him. There was that point early on, really early on, when it was still like just coming out. God, he was in every single game because he was such a good initiator, and he still is. But yeah, I think you're right. Teams can make use of any of the heroes in the pool if they just really throw them in the right combination. We said that kind of a little bit last week, but obviously, you know a lot more about what you said than I do, so I'm not going to even try to divulge into that quite yet.
You know things you said. Yeah, but I'm gonna. It was a Fnatic RC versus Baguette for the defense, number 3, which you can find at joindota.com. The VODs for those, and No Tail played Meepo, and it was mystical, magical. I gotta say, I don't get to see Meepo often. But seeing him in that game was really cool, and getting to see, apparently, which was something you could do in Dota 1 too, was running 2 pairs of boots, the bots and the power treads, which was really interesting. It was a really neat way to see Meepo get run. But alas, today's episode about Medusa. So
I want to talk about that.
Oh,
you can't just mention Meepo and not expect me to have a little something to say about that.
Never do.
I know I normally don't, and I'm not Bonk, so obviously Meepo is not like my bread and butter. But first of all, I just want to say, No Tail, when he streams, which he does pretty frequently, apparently he streams just like Meepo 90% of his games. He loves that hero to death. Like, it is definitely one of his favorite. And I guess now he's finally had a chance to bring him into a competitive game, which I'm sure was thrilled to death about. Of course, they were playing. Okay, you said like Baguette, like, okay, they were playing a piece of bread, so obviously it wasn't their hardest matchup of the lifetime, but still, it's really cool to see. Yeah, it has to be the first time at least a team that's been casted picked up, right, competitively.
I don't know of any others off the top of my head.
Yeah, and like it might have happened in like a collegiate, like some lower tier thing, but definitely one that we haven't seen recently. And there was a video on the Dota 2 Reddit of him diving a fountain and just microing his Meepos to the point where, you know, none of them died, and he killed 3 or 4 heroes in the fountain and still lived with all of his Meepos. Like, it's just ludicrous how if you have that much control, how good that hero can truly be. And then going back to your Boots of Travel thing, definitely makes a lot of sense. You know, it's obviously a great item for him since, poof, you can instantly bring them back and forth with that item, but making it your main boot, not the greatest thing, because then, you know, you'd rather have treads or something where they all gain attack speed and stats instead of just movement. So I definitely I think it makes sense to have two pairs of boots instead of one on him there as well.
It makes sense to have multiple
It's
boots.
logical.
It's so funny. Yeah, but it's great. I didn't know that you could even do that in Dota 1, so it was really neat to see. I even forgot to mention too, because you're talking about it's great that you can have that much control, and he played it beautifully too. Like it was really neat to watch. So many great usages of the net, and comboing it with a Shadow Demon and an Exort Invoker. Like it was so well thought out to run it in that game. But Visage actually getting played by Fluff and Stuff, and when he came into the game, everybody's like, oh snap, time to see some Fluff and Stuff Visage, because he's one of those heroes that's kind of specialized, because you need an extraordinary amount of control and presence of mind to play those heroes, and they're very sort of specific to themselves, and you can't really carry over all of what you might learn from playing that hero into other heroes. But it's so cool just to see the massive number of heroes that are competitively viable right now. Are you done? Can I move on?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry.
Visage.
Just one little thing. You said Visage. I did want to just briefly say I was watching Neo Dota's come out with a new North American, keyword there, tournament. It's like a kind of like a King of the Hill. I forgot what they actually call it. It's like some arena or something. God, let me try to find it real quick. But basically, okay, fine. It's a King of the Hill. Is it Killing Spree? Maybe that's what they're calling it. Anyways, it's 4 North American teams, I believe it is, and basically they play each other, and you try to win. I believe it's like 3 times in a row. If you do, then you get $100, and then for each win consecutively after that, you get $100 more per game per win until you're defeated. So it's not a ton of money, but it's first of all, it's exciting because it's North American only. So finally, North America's getting some kind of presence in the professional scene again. Not that their teams are always the best necessarily, but still. And now to tie it all back into what you were saying, it was Fnatic versus EG last night that I was watching. Our friend Mott was casting it solo, actually, so props to him. But basically, Visage was picked up, and I hadn't seen it picked up in a long time, and they almost won, but it was just the story of it late game. I like him a pretty good amount, but I don't know, compared to some of the other supports that are in the game, I started to, I felt like his presence wasn't as important, but it was still cool to see him used. I guess that's where I was trying to drive it home. It's nice to see those heroes that are left out in the cold to get warmed up again there.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost like that Meepo thing, really, when you think about it, where you have your hero being able to support and maybe farm or run about doing your duties, laying out the wards and doing whatever, and if you have that presence of mind and that amount of control, you send your familiars around and you get to, provide stuns to other lanes, and I feel like really is really strong ganking support early on, and then later on you can just do a tremendous amount of damage because you're fairly durable for being a support hero. So yeah, it's really cool to get to see him, especially because he's a hero that, again, you sort of regard as being competitively viable, but because of maybe how difficult he is to play, you don't get to see him all that often.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think we can finally move on now.
Okay, so I'm excited because Medusa is a hero that we know is going to be competitively viable, at least. Maybe not necessarily picked up, immediately as soon as entering happens mode, because of some things that we might go into later. But really a hero that was made famous by ZSMJ back in Dota 1, who was kind of considered to be like the penultimate Asian farmer, did this pretty consistent item build every single time with the Medusa, Lincoln Sphere, Manta Style, Butterfly, and then into Rapier. And even played games where he wound up losing the Rapier, and because he was so good at farming, he would have another one ready to go quickly enough that the other team couldn't win. But I think it's just a really neat hero to get to see added to the game, and really when you look at the heroes that are sort of left to bring in, the only one that kind of strikes me right off the bat is, yep, we'll probably see him, is the Bristleback.
Oh, yeah. Well, Bristle and Torn Chiefin will apparently make an impact. I haven't, of course, we don't have much experience with Torn Chiefin, but from what I've heard from people like Gods and other that were saying that he was just used a lot, so yeah, I think those two will definitely be a nice impact. And then, of course, there's the new heroes that who the hell knows what they're going to do to the scene once they're in captain's mode. But yeah, no, I agree. She will be. She'll definitely be something. I think she'll be used eventually. And I agree. I don't think it might not be right away necessarily, but once teams are comfortable with her and figure out what kind of lineup they'd like to use her in, then oh no, I definitely think she'll be present there. I have to play the token quote. That's becoming just a thing now. So here we go. The only real beauty is power. So she has a pretty manly voice. Let's just start with that. She really does. And not that I'm surprised necessarily. She's kind of... She might be the least attractive female in the game, per se. I mean, I don't know what your tastes are. Well, I guess it depends if you like snakes or spiders. I mean, at that point, it's really up to you.
I guess that really is a case-by-case thing. Once you get to that point.
Yeah, it's hard to determine at that point,
Blonde,
I guess.
redhead, snake, spider. Wait, what? Sorry.
Yeah, getting really weird there. But yeah, it's still really cool hero. I think they really did a great job with at least her design, her graphics. You know, she looks like a true Medusa would. So, I mean, I guess that's nice. So, I'm gonna let you go over the abilities since you were just hankering for this one to come out for a while. So.
Oh, okay.
You're lucky.
The good old Q ability. Ability slot number 1, split shot, splits your attack into 5. They hit for a percentage of your total damage in a radius of 600, I do believe it is. Mystic Snake, you shoot a projectile that bounces, and it will return to you after having done damage and stealing mana. Mana Shield, damage is absorbed based on your available mana. Or you just absorb 50% of the damage you take is done to your mana pool instead of your health. There you go. Try number 3. And then Stone Gaze, your, I guess, AoE crowd control, a little bit of slow there, and attack speed slow. Brings you down to your minimum movement speed, reduces attack speed by 100% in an area around you. Also, does damage to illusions, which may or may not be important.
Very important, actually, but we'll get into that later as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, maybe you were just joking around. All right. Yeah, so obviously that's a good brief summary up there of her, but, you know, obviously the main reason you were kind of describing her as an ultra farmer, split shot and Mystic Snake, making that very easy to do. Of course, Mystic Snake replaced, when she back was first in Dota 1, she had Chain Lightning, which you all should be familiar with if you've played any kind of Warcraft, or if you've ever mind-controlled the Harpy minion in the jungle that has Chain Lightning. Huh? There you go.
Yeah.
But obviously they replaced it with Mystic Snake, which kind of does the opposite and is a lot better just in general. You know, not only does it do more damage per unit it hits, but it steals that mana, which is just amazing also. And then Split Shot, you don't really have to explain too much. Should be pretty obvious what that means. Yeah, it hits 5 people, up to 80% damage at that last rank. So you're almost doing full damage to 5 targets instead of 100% to 1. So if you're allowed to just sit there in a team fight and just spray away at the whole team, wow, yeah, that was a little raunchy. But here, let's do some quick math. 80% times 5 compared to 100% times 1. That's 400% compared to 100%. So 4 times the damage is pretty substantial, you might say. If you're allowed to hit 5 heroes with all your... Of course, it's not like they prioritize heroes with those, but...
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the other heroes that have cleave, or like sort of a cleave for being a ranged hero. The Gyrocopter and the Luna, I think, are the big ones. And obviously those abilities work a little bit differently, because your flat cannon, it's actually longer than your attack range, the AoE that you hit in. Medusa, it's equal to her attack range, I do believe, at that 600. Then Luna, obviously, the glaives bounce around as they may. So it's neat to see that you sort of get every flavor of ranged cleave that you possibly can with her in the pool now. But yeah, I think she's a really interesting hero because she does have this really high potential for damage output. Because of the mana shield, she's incredibly durable, and really, I think she's one of these heroes that is so general stat dependent. You know, we've talked about Aghanim Scepter in the past. You know, some heroes it's just not entirely viable on, A, because of the effect, and B, you get a lot of stats you don't necessarily need. Like, okay, I got agility and I'm an int hero. That's fantastic. And you can always generalize and say that strength's nice for health, but for the most part, some of those stats get wasted. But really, you look at Medusa and you go, int, agility, strength, all of those actually really important to keeping her alive and well and doing tons of damage.
Agonyms?
No, I'm just saying general stats.
Oh, I'm like, are you
Sorry.
trolling me right now? Like, I hope you don't build Agonyms on her, because that would be pretty... Well, the stats would be nice, but I don't know after that what that's really going to help. But, yeah, you're right. She really does benefit from all three stats. Of course, her main attribute is agility, which is important to note, because sometimes you might be a little confused. I was, frankly, when I'm like, okay, so you want to build this big mana pool to absorb all this damage, but you're an agility carry, so you don't really want a ton of int items. So yeah, now you're looking at those items that you're right, kind of build your pools without making you have to stack int. So things like the Manta, like Lincolns, etc., etc. Just stats in general. The Scotty, my favorite item on her personally. It's so expensive, but God, if you get that, it's amazing. Almost 100% positive that when you use Split Shot, your orb affects all the
No,
hit.
it does not.
Does not?
It's just the main target.
I think it must be a visual bug
Crit,
or something.
slow, all of those are just your primary target. Sorry. Just
Damn it.
rain
Well,
on your parade there,
You
buddy.
really did. Well, I knew crit wouldn't. That would just be OP as hell. But okay. Well, I thought Frost did. I guess I'm wrong. But
No,
either
it's
way, it's still fun to build on her. So too bad.
Yep. But yeah, no, like you're saying, I think that's really what makes some of those, like the Link and the Manta, really great, important items on her. And I guess while we're talking about it, I personally, I like the Ring of Aquila. I like Drums of Endurance as well. Because she actually, if my research is correct, the lowest starting health of any hero in the game. She is incredibly frail before the levels come up, before you get the points in the Mana Shield, which is definitely a priority when you're leveling her, in my opinion. So really just getting some of those small items that really do a decent amount for you and your team is really nice. I also kind of like building her sort of in that same way that you do the Luna in that respect. You kind of you go from the Aquila and the drums into like a Yasha, and then you can go for your mana style. Of course, you can also go for the Lincolns first, depending on what you want to do. But power treads or the phase boots, I feel like both viable ways to go. I feel like you are durable. You can go for that sort of movement speed that you typically go with the Luna, to also just have a lot of mobility. And when you consider that your Stone Gaze it's an area around you, getting that movement speed for getting into position, I feel like it's fairly important as well. I don't know, what are your thoughts on how to get items for?
The boot thing, I've seen both sides really well explained. For example, the phase boots. She is one of these agility carries that just does not have a good escape. Now, you could argue, of course, her ultimate does help a lot with that department, but, especially early on in the game, you might either not have it or it's really long cooldown, so you're not always going to have that as a tool to get out of there. So then the phase boots could help you run away in some situations, as well as the auto attack damage, etc., etc. But then I usually prefer the treads. For of course both attack speed, the tankiness like you said, and then the little, not really a trick, but to really abuse the mana restoration of Mystic Snake, you start out with int treads, cast your Mystic Snake, switch it over to strength or agility. When it comes back, you gain mana, but you gain more because your mana pool is smaller when you got it back. So it's not really a trick, but it is something you can make use of with the treads. Hey, if you buy treads, shame on you if you don't do things like that, just in general. With any hero, if you cast a spell, start with it and switch it back. The end.
Yes.
But that's why I like treads, personally. But a starting item always kind of throws me off. And I guess it also depends on what lane you're in. If I'm mid, I like to go bottle really quick so I don't get too many items off the start. But if I'm side lane, that's where it can get really tricky. I think you were saying you want to go towards like a Basilisk normally? Basilius, rather?
Yeah, I think she has her starting damage isn't phenomenal. I mean, it's not awful. I mean, it's 45 to 50, so I really even just like picking up the first part of the Wraith Band just to get that starting agility, so it's a little bit easier to last hit. I would expect to exclusively see her in the side lane. To be honest, I think she's probably a little bit too frail to go up against a lot of the powerful mid heroes that scale up in the damage really quickly. Even though she does really benefit from the levels, I just think it's probably a lot smarter to play her with some support, some other people to defend her, because she also, like we were mentioning earlier, doesn't really have any escapes. So she'd be a really easy target for early ganks, early smoke ganks, roaming heroes, etc.
And as well as Mystic Snake, obviously, if you're against 2 or more heroes, you're going to benefit that much more from the Mana Steal, and you'll be hitting that much harder on those extra heroes. So, Mystic Snake, it's one of those spells that you really, it's kind of not the easiest thing to use well. Obviously, like we said, the damage and mana steal increases per jump 25%. So you don't want to just cast it right away on the enemy hero. You want to kind of use it in conjunction with creeps or with maybe other heroes to make it bounce to do that maximum damage to someone else. Thankfully, so when the hero first came out in Dota 2, the animation for it was kind of hard to see. It was like a kind of whitish, grayish little snake that slid around. You're like, oh, I think that's it coming back to me. I have no idea. Now it's this very bright green snake, very obvious, so it's a lot easier to use. So at least they did that change, but I definitely agree. I think she just suits her better, not only to hit more heroes and such in that side lane, but then also you can, with split shot, go to the jungle and just start farming up that much more later on.
Yeah, I mean, what are you thinking for the skill build? I mean, I think it's fairly rigid. I really don't think that there's a whole lot of room to mess around with it unless you have really specific
No, it's
interests.
pretty well. Okay,
Shot
you made fun of me when I was doing it the other time. I think we both agree Mystic Snake is probably number 1. Just get that. It's your main damage move, at least early on, and the more you level it, the better it is. Just all around, it's just amazing.
Yeah, because you get the increase in the mana soul, and then you also get an increase in the jumps.
Yeah.
So it's really huge for leveling it up. And also, again, just piggybacking off the fact that she does have such low starting health, and none of her stat gains are really all that impressive. Being mana shield really early is important, I think, as well. So, me personally, I'm maxing both of those first before I even get the ultimate. Like 200 mana at level 10. Let's say you don't have any additional in items, you're sitting at 500 mana. So you're gonna drop almost half of your mana pool in a team fight or in an escape, and your mana is how you're surviving. Like, I don't really know that I like that. And then split shot, it's great, but that early on in the game, I don't really think much of a need to decrease your overall or your single target damage, I should say.
Right. That's generally how the game will go. In the first 15-20 minutes, you're not really clearing waves of creeps. You're actually trying to hold it in equilibrium. So, you're not going to try to push the lane. So split shot early on is not going to do a lot of good for you unless you're like in the jungle at level 5, which God knows why you would be there. But, so essentially holding off on that, definitely agree. I think Mystic Snake and Mana Shield should be your priority. I probably would disagree. I would probably pick up Stone Gaze at 6 every time just in case of a gank or who knows what. It's nice to have around. But I could see your reasoning for not picking it up. What was I going to say? As far as the Mana Shield usage early on, hopefully you don't have to use it to absorb the damage. Hopefully you can just use your regeneration like healing salves and tangos and stuff instead of... Because you want to really save your mana for Mystic Snake, obviously. That's how you're going to put a lot of pressure on people. So I agree leveling it up is important, so that way... Obviously, okay, so what leveling Mana Shield up does essentially is for every point of damage you take, you use less mana to absorb that damage. So using it at higher ranks is a lot more efficient than lower ranks, so yeah.
Yeah, which I think is why it's important to get it
Right.
up early. And that's something else to point out that we didn't really mention about the abilities. The split shot and the mana shield are toggles. There's a slight transformation time on the split shot apparently. But I think being able to know when to toggle these abilities on and off is really important because, like you're saying, Mystic Snake is a pretty big ability. It even gives you some of that mana back, so it doesn't even come with its full cost essentially by the time it returns to you. And so, if you have to turn the mana shield off to make sure that you have enough mana for the Mystic Snake. And also the split shot, it's great in the team fights, but there's also this thing of, oh great, I'm doing all this AoE damage, that's fantastic, but there's also, hey, we need to focus fire, essentially. You need to be able to burst down certain targets and knowing when to say, okay, I did a decent amount of AoE damage, let's make sure this guy goes down. I think that's really important. And one of those things, if you enjoy playing the Medusa, it's something to consider to pay attention to in the team fights.
Interesting statistic. If the snake hits all 6 jumps and the targets have remaining mana, Medusa will steal 564 total mana. That's pretty good for a 170 mana cost spell. Now, the likelihood of something like that happening is very slim, unless you have an Enigma or Darkseer or something crazy like that on your team, or Magnus. But either way, it's definitely a cool possibility, and that's where. It's like early game, you want to build your mana pool, you want to get mana regen, because your Mystic Snake's not really stealing a lot back at that point, and you're kind of just using a lot of mana, because it's expensive normally. It's 140 at the first rank. So you're trying to get all these items, but late game, when you're in team fights and stuff, you're getting a ton of mana back. You're not really using it for anything else. Stone Gaze doesn't cost mana at the later ranks. And so Mana Shield's just about it. So really, getting a ton of regen and stuff like that, not the greatest thing later on in the game. So really, I think a focus should be more on, I think we probably said it before, but a focus more on just building the pool up instead of worrying about how much regen you're really going for is probably the more key thing there.
Yeah, so, what do you think about this ZSMJ picking up the Divine Rapier? I think that's... Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's actually, like, every single, not every single, but a lot of games where I've seen statistics of people playing Medusa, whether it's high tier, low tier, it seems like at least there's one Divine Rapier every 2 games or something. Like, the amount of farm this hero gets is just absurd. And so, at that point, once you feel durable enough, why wouldn't you go that? You're hitting 5 targets with that split shot, doing an extra bajillion damage to all of them. Seems like a pretty smart idea.
Yeah, that's really nice thing too. Is I really kind of do like comparing her to Luna a bit. And you look how Luna has to build. It's a lot about the movement speed to get in and out of fights. It's the BKB so that you can run around and cleave every way down. Medusa, it's really sort of I'm gonna say the other way around. She's just so durable. She can just sit there and take hits because of the mana shield. And if you go that classic ZSMJ build and you go for the Lincolns into the Manta, etc., Lincolns is going to be blocking your spells. It's also going to be giving you the regen and the base stats, that base mana pool. The Mana Style is going to let you get out of certain ensnares, etc. So really, you're getting yourself some immunity from spell damage just in that build on top of your natural tankiness. So why not go for a big crazy item like that? I think it's really neat. The one I watched this crazy YouTube video, which was like a tribute to ZSMJ, and it was just like this whole history of his picking Drow and Medusa and making them viable heroes and yada yada, and how fast he could farm. One of the screenshots to finish off his inventory, Satanic and bots. So just being able to get that lifesteal to make yourself even that more durable, and the bots just to be able to run around the map. At that point, it just makes total sense. And you figure it's great, too, I feel like, putting her in a lineup where prioritizing her is a bad decision because there's going to be other heroes running around, like Night Stalker, somebody else that I feel like is really durable, can get up in people's face, does a lot of damage, so you want to take him down, but also if you're going to spend that much energy to kill Night Stalker, what's everybody else on the team doing? If you are able to pick up a lineup that has a lot of high priority durable targets, she, I feel like, gets even better because you can't necessarily focus her.
Yeah, no, it definitely. She snowballs so hard. It's amazing, and it's almost, it's not quite like a Spectre effect, but basically you get to the point where you get these big items, you feel really tanky. Everyone wants to focus you because you're doing a lot of damage, but if they are, you're obviously absorbing half of it right off the bat. So they're taking a lot longer to kill you, while the rest of the team is probably putting down the pain with whatever they're doing. And normally you'll probably see her more than not. Ran not as the only one that does a lot of damage on the team. There might be another pretty good source of damage either from the mid or the other lane or the jungle. And then so basically if you are the one getting targeted down the whole fight, these other people are going to be doing a lot of other, obviously, what they should be doing. So, yeah, I like her in that regard as well. And if you build your first two items tanky, then you have the freedom then at that point just to go something crazy damage. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna say mine, and then I'll ask yours. My ideal six box build here. What you would buy if you had 6 slots available with her? I'm gonna say personally, boots of travel off the start. Plus, you need boots, right? Can't move her out without boots. Although ironically, she's a snake. So where are these boots really going? I don't know. But
that's a strong question. These are the questions people should be asking.
We need to put to the research and development segment. I love my Eye of Scotty. I will have an Eye of Scotty on her. Satanic as well, because those do stack with one another. And then I usually will have a Lincoln's, I guess, at this point. So I'm up to 4 now. The last 2, I mean, that's kind of tricky. I guess 2 Divine Rapiers sounds kind of nice, but at that point, I don't know. Maybe 1, maybe 2. A Butterfly, depending on what you're up against. If you're against a lot of auto attackers, a Bee-Fly could be really nice to help with the taking less damage as well. But do you have some? I know you have some disagreements about at least one of my items there, but.
I mean, Scotty's fine. I mean, again, I feel like she's one of these heroes that just benefits from all stats in general really well. And when you look, I almost feel like the Lincolns, the Manta, are such core items on her that when you think about the Manta, your illusions aren't getting your plus damage, they're just getting your agility damage, so to speak. So putting items that are boosting your agility together makes a ton of sense if you're going to go for Manta. So going, the Lincolns, going the Bee-Fly makes a ton of sense. And then again, if you're dodging attacks with the evasion, then you're saving your mana, you're saving some of your health. I'm interested in, like, Diffusal in theory is interesting, not necessarily good. I mean, I do really like the ZSMJ build that we were talking about earlier. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't as far as the order you purchase stuff in, I don't know if I like Lincoln's as a first item. I think I like Manta better, just being able to pick up that Yasha for the movement speed to be able to get in and out faster. But obviously those ideal situations come around so seldom. I do have to say I do like the Drums of Endurance. I think it's fantastic. I think she's a hero in general that just has a really strong mid game. It's once you're level 8, you're doing a good amount of burst damage with your Mystic Snake. You're absorbing a ton of damage. If you're able to get your drums up by then, you have some additional push potential. And the Mystic Snake is fantastic, even if you're just hitting the melee creeps and the one range creep with mana. Like, it's not just this thing that has to be used to refund your mana. It's just fantastic for obliterating creep waves. So I think she really does have a tremendous amount of mid-game potential, and then can really move into that the late game, being able to scale up so well with the split shot.
Well, she's obviously a good pusher. I mean, 2 of her moves are going to clear creep waves in matters of seconds, especially when you get a lot more damage. So Manta also makes a lot more sense on top of all the other reasons, just because it's more or less a pushing item for carries. Getting those illusions to do more damage or take damage is very helpful. I've also heard things saying that she's a great split pusher. Using her in a separate lane, keeping your other 4 teammates in a different lane, and obviously with her creep clear potential, she can push a lane very quickly. If you go these kind of damagey items, she will clear that lane very quickly. But one of the only concerns with that is her escape. If they decide to gank her while she's split pushing, what's she really going to do except ult and try to get out of there? Probably not going to happen. But I do like her in that pushing regard, so I think I agree Manta is definitely core on her as well. I don't know, Diffusal, first of all, why use the Venom that usually kills you is one of those things I just have to say. Diffusal, definitely her nemesis in the item world.
That's a good segue. Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you're thinking about purchasing yourself, oh, hey, additional agility and some mana, perfect, this is what we want. But yeah, it seems like most of the mana drain targets seem to be her hardest counters, and that's kind of one of the things when we were talking about earlier, are we going to see her right away? Is it, oh, snap, Medusa, everybody pick? When you consider that Nyx Assassin is essentially a permaban, and if you don't, then you pay for it. Keeper of the Light is really that hero that's so strong it gets picked, but not strong enough to necessarily ban in the first four. Some teams do. And Phantom Lancer has shown himself to be an incredibly powerful carry and a hero that in a super late game can even look to out carry like the anti-mage per se. So, when you look at those types of things, is she a hero that you can really look to pick up?
That's where it gets frustrating. Her release is on the the footsteps of this Phantom Lancer coming out in. Like now Phantom Lancer's everywhere. Teams are just loving picking him up in some situations. Anti-Mage's not dead. He's still very viable. And when you pick a hero like this, those two are the main mana drained heroes that you will come against. And since they're still pretty, viable at this stage in the game or used, that's where it gets scary. I mean, a lot of people, well, at least I kind of joined them and thought, I'm like, oh, she kind of counters Phantom Lancer, though, because of her ulti. Those, 1,500 damage at the last rank to illusions? That's going to pretty much one-shot all of them. He'll get them right back. He's that kind of hero. He'll just use another lance, and then before you know it, he's maxed them out again. So, yeah, you'll clear the first wave of them, but he's one of those heroes that they're just going to come right back. Anti-Mage, obviously, he can blink around. He does a ton of mana drain. I mean, it's just, it's just a ton of damage on top of what you're already taking. I don't know. I think they're going to really mess with her. And I feel like if you want to run a hero like Medusa, you either have to ban those kind of heroes early, or you have to pick her in the later stages where they're not expecting it and they might have their carry or something at that point.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing I think that's important to point out too is I mentioned I really like Medusa's mid game strength, but of course that's a lot dependent on her mana. And even with the anti-mages that we've been seeing in the G League, several of the casters, the English-speaking casters that have casted those games, even said, I hate seeing the anti-mage show up because he really is just showing himself to be that fallback hero. He's just so, let's just get him and then we'll probably win. But the way that he's been played recently in those G League games is really is a more aggressive hero. He's not that let's just sit back and farm. He really is, okay, there are heroes that can out carry me now in the super late game, so I do have to be ready for my sweet spot, that like 40 to 60 minute window. I have to be really strong then. So let's look for some openings earlier on. He's not the I'm going to run around in my woods and just cleave everything to farm. And Phantom Lancer too, even it's great that you can do that 1500 burst damage to the illusions, but if you're playing that early game Phantom Lancer, you can look to see a Vanguard Diffusal Blade, and then doing 1500 damage might not necessarily kill full health illusions. So it is really awesome that her ultimate does that, to sort of be able to deal with the illusions like that, but is it going to be enough when she really needs it? Not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the Outworld Destroyer, like, oh, my orb does extra illusions. Okay, you're killing one at a time where they're multiplying and annihilating your mana pool. Like, that's not going to work. So, yeah, it's a nice little initial, hey, that's awesome. I think it'd be a lot better against a hero like Chaos Knight, where he's only got a few of them and they're not going to come back kind of thing. But or Manta-style illusions, it'll kill them right away. But, something like Phantom Lancer, no, that's not going to stop him. He's going to be still a force to reckon with. Oh God, what was I going to say? In terms of, I like how you were saying you're excited to see him played. Isn't he like the definition of China farm hero? So won't he make games boring or no?
I mean, I feel like that's depending on who's playing him, what scene we're looking at. I think she is definitely a late game powerhouse again because of how well she scales, and you might say in sort of that anti-mage fashion, I'm just gonna wait till I hit these items and then I'll start doing things. But I think she does have a tremendous amount of early game potential and a lot of early game presence as well. Like I said, I go for that Aquila and I go for the drums pretty much every time, and then look to build that to the mana style. So if you're going for your Lincolns first and you're automatically assuming that defensive posture, then yeah, it might make for the slower game. But I think you can definitely play her a different way, a more aggressive way, a more push-oriented way, even without split shot, so that it won't be that big of a deal. The only other hero that I mean we mentioned, but that might be to go into why, like the Keeper of the Light, I feel like is maybe one of the more damning heroes at the moment. Not even because of the mana leak. Like that's nice, whatever mana drain. Oh, that's unfortunate. But again, just in how crappy her base stats are, how low health she has. Illuminate hurts, but by that same token, if you can pick up a Codal and then you know sneak pick the Medusa, your fourth or your fifth, and you have that Codal and you can just give her the mana to cast Mystic Snake, it does a tremendous amount of damage early on, and you know that might be a really nice strong combo. Some of the other things to mention too, while we're talking about heroes, as far as the ones that go with her, the R heroes are really nice because you're going to be turning an additive thing into a multiplicative thing when you turn on the split shot. I feel like that makes sense. I'm not a math major, but
yes,
it sounds good. I like it. Really, if you want to look at a hard counter, right? If you enfeeble her with Bane, and then she's reducing her damage that she's splitting. I mean, there you go. There's your hard counter right there. As I turn into a square.
The hard counter is Bane. Okay.
Yes.
Well then, so you're saying the best support is Lycan then, for the Howl?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
And Bane's ultimate drains mana. I'm just saying.
Hey, I love Bane, dude. He's a wonderful hero in general, but he's great against any hard carry. That's kind of one of his purposes, is to take them out of the fight more or less with Nightmare and Enfeeble. But yeah, no, I agree. I like the idea of Codal with her, but Codal, he's such a weird support because obviously no real great CC. Mana leak, debatable, not really that great. But you know, just giving that mana back with Chakra is just fantastic. I do agree. You know, Mystic Snake, like I said early on, you're not getting a lot of mana back, so it's hard to keep casting that. But you know, she'll keep pumping that right back into you. You'll harass them out of the lane, and it shouldn't be too challenging. Illuminate, so maybe he'll just kind of do one of those strats where he like pulls and farms the jungle while he comes back to Chakra Magic every now and then, so she still gets that solo XP kind of thing. Is that what you're kind of thinking here?
I'm just saying Codal is one of the 3 strongest supports in the game right now, bar none, that get past the drafts. I mean, I'm not including Nyx, because he's pretty much permabanned. But Shadow Demon, Codal, and the one that was in my head 2 seconds ago that I'm not... Oh, Rubik. Really, I think just show up a lot and are very strong because they scale into the later game, not necessarily Codal, but and just what he's able to do to zone out the enemy team. And I think just making that combination is really nice. And I think because, you know, if you're not letting the other team have him, and he's a really strong counter to the Medusa, that might be a good enough reason to try and...
Yeah, he's obviously a good anti-push. And if you're picking Medusa, you're playing on pushing pretty hard at one point in the game, so not necessarily a bad thing to have her there. Have him there, yeah.
I think... I feel exhausted. I don't know anything else that we can even mention about the Medusa.
About the Medusa, no. There were some other things I wanted to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
But Medusa, I think, wow, we covered her pretty extensively, I have to say.
And I'll be honest, right? Because maybe if you go through the archives, we may have not necessarily respected the viability of certain heroes, or misjudged their abilities. I feel like we did pretty spot on job of evaluating this hero. So, you know, if I could pat your back through the internet, I'm going to do that right now. Very well played, sir.
Thank you.
That's right. It took 47 episodes, but it's real nice now, isn't it?
Okay, I have to play one more sound clip, and then I'll explain what it is to you, BDL Master, because you can't hear.
Oh, I mistook you for a fire hydra.
So I just played the Killing Jakiro. Oh, I mistook you for a fire hydra. So, folks, if you walk up in the bar and some guy is messing with your girl, right? Here's what you say to him. Oh, I mistook you for a fire hydra. He is not going to know how to come back, because that is probably one of the most insulting things you can say to someone. Or apparently that's at least what Medusa thinks. Can you explain in any capacity what the hell that means? I almost thought he was going to, like, fire hydrant, and maybe, like, that's kind of where he was taking that, but no, he cuts off at Hydra. And then does that mean the ice part doesn't exist? In like, so he's like a one-headed dragon, and then that's
Which would
insulting.
make a Hydra, and then
Oh, but a Hydra has multiple heads. You're right. So,
so
that is probably one of the most confusing lines I've ever heard in this game. But now you
Yeah.
know how to deal with foes. Just right there, done. You can at least say you'll confuse them, if nothing else. They will not be able to come back.
I think if you, in a real-life scenario, tried to call someone a fire hydra, they would most likely be confused. Yeah.
They'll be
That's-
paralyzed. We used that joke last time.
Thank
I
you.
know. But it's like the only joke I can think of involving this hero. It's difficult.
I will say that I feel obligated to check this immediately because she does make a snakes on the plane joke.
Yes.
Is it for killing Bat Rider?
No,
Because
it's
that
not.
would be amazing.
Let me play it really quick though.
Snakes on a plane.
There you go. No, it's for the flying sandwich. It's for gyrocopter. So
Okay, that's still okay. That's even better.
yeah, exactly. He's literally on a plane. I mean, it's you know, you can't really
It's
argue
nice.
that one.
I like it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not gonna play all of them, but Ogre Magi, it's you rolled Snake Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty,
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a nice one. You know, they definitely put some. These are the zingers that I need to like think about on my own here. Maybe I could work for them, Valve, in some kind of capacity. I'll send them that Dota joke list and see where it takes me.
Just see what happens.
That's my
man.
resume, just that Dota joke list.
Yeah. I just noticed this one for killing Shadow Shaman. Leave the snake magic to the experts, Shaman. That's pretty cool.
Ooh.
I like that one. Ooh. Oh, hello.
And there's also apparently a Phoenix one, and it looks like a Tuskar one. Oh, who's now just called Tusk, by the way. They changed his name. As well as Doombringer is now just Doom. So they've changed the... Yep, he's just Doom. Go look it up in the game if you want.
I don't wanna.
Yeah.
I like Doombringer.
He is no longer the bringer of Doom. He is just Doom himself.
Oh, yeah, that's...
He is the video game we all remember with 16 pixels where you have a chainsaw and you kill those brown, weird, spiky guys. And that's literally all you do. Yeah, Doom. It's kind of sad. That's the end of an era there. Because Doombringer was really a cool name.
Lucifer the Doom. Oh.
Lucifer the Doom. Well, he's all-encompassing now. He's just Doom. I mean,
Yeah, you're going down.
So-
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, the Tusk is kind of weird. You know,
Tusk. That's kind of a weird
that one
name,
rolls
dude.
off the tongue funny. I don't know if I like it, but you know, copyright infringement. I get it. You know,
I suppose it happens.
why
on
go to
occasion.
court when you can not go to court? Strong argument, you know.
I'm with you on there, and especially with like Blizzard, who's got plenty of money to combat you there. I was gonna go over these other patch notes where she was added really quick. There's not a ton, but just a few little things here and there. Well, actually, there's a really big one. They added mid-only game for private, which, of course, we have to assume was mainly for... Well, no, that's not true. There, of course, has been this Fistful of Tangos tournament, which has been just one-on-one, mid-only, hosted by Beyond the Summit. It's been kind of interesting. You know, there's been some things here and there that, you know, not as great. But, you know, at the end of the day, they ran mid, and they were like, oh, these side lanes, oh, they killed a tower at this point, oh, now I have a gold advantage. And they were at one point using cheats, enabling cheats so they could balance out anything that happened like that. At one point they spawned fountains in the other lanes to instantly kill all creeps that came in, which is pretty good. And now in this mid-only mode, creeps no longer spawn in the other lanes. They're disabled. So it really is just a battle of mid. The other awesome, amazing perk of this mode, same hero is also in this option. So, Mid Wars is now in private games. And
Clutch Wars,
actually, well, no, it's Mid Wars in general. Go if you are interested in playing these kind of games I'm about to explain. There's a channel you join called MID space WARS Mid Wars, capital M, capital W. There's a lot of people in that channel in Dota 2, and they just host a lot of private games. The main popular, of course, is what we call Pudge Wars. It's not exactly like the custom map in Dota, because that was a whole separate map, but essentially all 10 players pick Pudge, and you just go mid, and you just have a ball. You know, there's no real rules. You kind of just hook each other. It's insane. It's hilarious, and it's a lot of fun. Me and Bonk were playing last night, having a great time. But the reason I'm saying Mid Wars in general, they play with all sorts of heroes. There's a Meepo Wars, which is the stupidest thing. Yeah, if only you played one of those. That's one's pretty crazy. I've heard of some Windrunner wars. There's just like power shots and shackles galore, like everywhere. Codal wars, I want to try one of these days. Just illuminate the world. There's a lot of possibilities there. But at the end of the day, that's actually a really fun thing. I'm glad they put that in. It was so simple, too. They just turned off spawns, and just like that, the game modes exist. So, and the same hero, of course, helps. But then finally, they added the balance shuffle to non-tournament private lobbies. So, kind of reminds me of Heroes New Earth back when we played that, where there was a button where you could click in it balanced based on players' ratings and whatnot. Kind of makes it sound like that's what would happen. So if you host a random event with people you don't know, you can just click that button and hopefully it's kind of even, I guess. Am I missing anything really important there? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you hit it. And I mean, that's just really awesome. I mean, not to throw other companies under the bus that might make these types of MOBA games. Let's think about how long it took ARAM in League of Legends to be this crazy huge popular thing for Riot to mess with their map. I mean, just the fact that you've had ATOD, the backwards draft tournament, which there's now a mode for in Dota 2, as well as this mid thing. It's really cool that Valve is really not even just we're gonna focus on the competitive-esque player, the legit main mode. We're gonna go ahead and just do all this other stuff. Like you said, it's not necessarily all that complicated, but it's just that nice simple stuff to make the game that much more accessible to maybe people that might not even like the regular style Dota play, but they liked those maps before in Dota 1.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's really great to see them respond to the community like this in just very quick fashion. It's really always a pleasure. The last thing I wanted to go into is who we think are our predictions for the next hero to be released. It's going to be a toss-up for sure, and Blizzard has their way of looking like one thing's going to happen, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Techies is now here. Like, what? Like, what just happened? But
did you mean Valve and not Blizzard?
Freudian slip.
I think you did.
Anyways, so it looks like, according to Dota Wiki, the three-way race right now is between Troll Warlord, Tusk, and that's so dumb. He's just one Tusk. That's all he is. He's the lone Tusk, and then Bristleback. So, based on how they have it organized, Troll Warlord looks to be reigning supreme, but it could go any direction. Of those three, is there one in particular you'd rather see come out next?
Rather see. I think Tuskar is neat.
Tusk. I'm just gonna call him Tuskar.
I keep wanting to call him something else, and then it makes me think of the South Park episode with Russell Crowe. And you just throw an A on it. Hey, Tuska!
Hey, Tusk!
I mean, that would be great. Just something, Tusk.
It's lame. Maybe they'll think of... Maybe the creative team over there will come up with something else, but we'll see.
We can pray. We can only hope,
but
right?
Do you have an answer?
He's neat. I think I got to watch some Dota 1 games with him, and he just looked insane and just way too much fun. And so I kind of want to mess with him. I think he'd be a lot of fun to play. Bristleback obviously would be cool because again, he's viable. He was picked in WCG this past year, I guess, in 2012. So clearly a competitively viable hero. So he might be the one that had the biggest impact of the game coming in, but I would like to play with Tusk personally. What about you? And I want to say too, while the name is stupid, the portrait that they have up on Dota 2 Wiki, which you guys can check out, is actually really cool. He looks pretty neat.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like the avatar they have for Tusk right now. It's making me really excited for what he's gonna look like, because he was lame as hell looking in Dota 1. I mean, they didn't have a lot to go with. I didn't like that little walrusy whatever the hell it was, but he looks like a badass already from that picture. So, yeah, I'm definitely excited for that. Of those three, I would definitely like Bristleback, hands down, to be coming into the game. Like you said, I've always thought he's been competitive in any situation. Obviously, when the meta game is focused on tri-lane versus tri-lane, he's just reigns supreme. He's just a dominating hero with that quill spray and whatnot. But I don't know. I'd like to see Tusk as well. we didn't have any real experience with him. And like you said, he's cool looking. He's cool because he's an ice. I don't know, that's really dumb. But he's cool. And then Troll Warlord was remade since we played him. So he might be a really fun hero to play now. Before he was boring as hell because you literally just auto-attacked and blinded. That's all you did all game. And you went and bashed people's faces in, which was kind of fun later. But now he actually has like spells, like he does stuff. And I kind of would like to see what that's like as well. So all three of these actually would be pretty cool, you know. Soulkeeper, he's been kind of reworked. So I wouldn't mind seeing how he would do. I really want to see Tauren Chief in the game to see how the competitive scene absorbs that, not for my personal sake, but to see how because he's apparently really good, so I'd like to see why that is. Phoenix was just remade in the latest patch. I didn't even know how he worked before, so now I really don't know how he works. Of course, my Pit Lord. Well, he's just never... I've given up on that faucet.
You're just not gonna...
I've really given up. Especially because they remade them. Now they're like, now we have to test them, and it's going to take forever. And fuck that. But I can tell you who I don't want: Ember Spirit. Just never put him in the game.
Never put Ember Spirit.
He is worse than Goblin Techies, in my opinion.
Oh.
In the capacity that he's like OP. Like I just don't. Goblin Techie is not OP. He's annoying. Ember Spirit is annoying and OP. It's just oh god.
I like it.
Never.
It's a new person to hate. I'll be honest, right? When Morphling got picked up in those two games, I like immediately remembered you and I being at the International too, and you would just sit there and stare at the screen, and you're just like, Morphling, how much more farm do you need? You start doing stuff. You're just like, it's just like Anti-Mage. I still can't watch Anti-Mage. I still can't watch Morphling. But yeah, and it's really cool. 14 heroes left, if I can count, which I'm not saying I can.
Yes, you can. Hey.
And really, a lot of them I think are going to be fun to play with, if not viable. So it's really cool to get to see sort of the finishing touches get put on this game, because obviously it's been a beta for ever.
Well, it's around August is when the Dota TI won, 2 Augusts ago. So yeah, we're getting a year and a half now. So
lengthy beta.
Quite well. They're definitely testing everything about it. What we're testing. But yeah. But okay, so our predictions on our next cast. Will it be based around an event? Will it be based around just whatever we feel like talking again? I
was thinking it'd be cool too, because I mean we do. Here's my opinion on why we did not continue. Right, it's time consuming to do the research, especially for episodes where we're like, oh, we do a weekly thing and we don't know what to talk about, so let's watch way too much Dota on top of the normal stuff we have to do. So, you know, we've always invited you guys as listeners, and, you know, we always, I think, shout out to the people that watch on YouTube and whatever, and tune in live. Thanks to all you guys who download the podcast and listen to it. We really, really, really would appreciate it, and it would, of course, galvanize us to do more if we knew what you guys wanted to chat about. And, of course, sending in questions and stuff has always been stuff that we've
I missed that segment. We used to have that segment where we'd answer viewer questions. It's been a long time, so yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, honestly, you know, I'm excited to talk about any of these new heroes, and I'm also excited to talk about anything else that anybody out there wants to talk about. So, you know, Dota On Demand at gmail.com, our Facebook Dota On Demand, the YouTube comments if you guys want to stop by there. You know, we really appreciate Twitter, because I know how to work that.
Me too, totally.
Is also a fantastic place for us to maybe see your comments if we can figure it out. So, yeah, there's only one more thing that I have to say, which I kind of forgot to mention earlier. I don't know if you have anything else.
I'm out of gas here.
Toby Wan, quote of the week. When Meepo was picked up, I feel like this could have been an internet meme that I was just not aware of, but direct quote, "Not sure if troll or successful at life." Here's to going out to all of our casual and competitive Dota. Go hard trolling or being successful at life. We will see you guys next time.